County Environmental Council has been a part of our community for more than 25 years, working to preserve our vast natural resources, our rivers, our wildlife, our wild land, and our communities. We're not in this alone. I want to take a minute to do some introductions. So, Park County Environmental Council has been working with the Greater Yellowstone Coalition. We have Caroline Bird, their executive director, and Joe Josephson. We've also been working with the Yellowstone Bend Citizens Council. Joe Green is here, Aaron's here. Where's Catherine Logan? She's here. And then I also want to introduce Jenny Carvine, who's with the Park County Environmental Council. She's a board member. She's also with Park Justice Attorney. And you wave your hand. And then we have some other. I didn't see Coleman. Coleman Davis, the owner of Chico's is here. Is Tracy here? Tracy Ray? She should be here. And then Jennifer Magic is here with John Custer's office. Coming. And then we also have Pat Pearson, who's the Mineral Program Manager with U.S. Forest Service. There's Pat. And Andy Keller, who's the Acting District Ranger with the Forest Service, while Alex is on. So, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Caroline, who's going to give us a brief introduction, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Michelle. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you all so much for coming. This is really great to see such a big crowd of folks that are here to learn more about this. And that's our goal. Our goal is to let everybody know what this is and what this isn't, so that we can all be informed and be involved in an informed and productive way. So thank you for coming on this beautiful evening. We really appreciate it. The Greater Yellowstone Coalition has been around for 30 plus years, and our mission is to protect the land, water, and wildlife of the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem by working with people, by working with you. So that's why we're here, because this is a key part of the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which is, as we all know, invaluable and unique on the planet. And I'm going to turn it over to Joe. Joe Josephson is our Montana Conservation Associate, and he's the kind of the go-to for this part, for this project, and for this part of the world. Come from here. So, Joe.
Thanks. So I was born and raised in Big Timber, and lived in Livingston for about 8 years to get away from the wind. And, just recently moved over to Bozeman. I've been in this position with the Greater Yellowstone Coalition for about 2.5 years. So, as Caroline said, we really want to use this as an information center or information session so that we can help the community learn more about what this is, what it isn't, what we know about the project, and some of our experiences in these sorts of projects. So there's going to be lots of questions. Hopefully we can move through this relatively quickly. Trying to digest a lot of information into something that's understandable and not too wonky, and hopefully there's lots of time for questions after. So how many of you have to speak up and holler a little more? If I can't, apologize, we don't have a microphone. So on June 2nd, we've got a scoping notice from the Forest Service, as we do almost every week, and a number of other organizations, landowners, and individuals in the valley got the same notice. From the Forest Service and the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, looking for comments on an exploratory drilling project in Emigrant Gulch. Now, a lot of you in the room, I'm sure, know way more about Emigrant Gulch than I do, and I'm sure many of you spent many years up there. And as you know, there's been a lot of that over the years up there. With the last sort of significant drilling going on back in the early 90s. There was about a 20-year period where there was a fair bit of activity. And this is a map here that came with that scoping notice showing 2 areas that they want to put in 12 different drill sites for exploratory. When we got this, we looked at it, said, well, we'll submit comments. We see these all the time. These are not new to this area or to Montana. So, but part of our job is to look at that a little deeper. And the scoping notice, just to be clear, is part of the NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy Act. And the Forest Service and the state, under other rules, the Montana Mining Reclamation Act and the Montana Environmental Policy Act, are actually obligated by those laws, including the 1872 mining law, to facilitate the extraction of these minerals. So they're following the letter of the law, doing their job, and putting out this scoping notice, which is the first step. And that's where we're at now. I want to be very clear. There is no mine. There's no plan for a mine. There's no proposal for a mine. But the first step in getting there is exploratory work. So I just want to be very clear about that. So we started looking into this. And so this was a map that came with the scoping. And then in the plan of operations that this company, Lucky Minerals, out of Vancouver, British Columbia, submitted to, they're the ones who submitted the plan to the Forest Service. And, what do we know about them? Well, not a lot, but they're a publicly traded company. Last we checked is 14 cents a share on some minor stock exchange in Canada. So when we talk about a little bit more about what we know of that in a minute, but this is a map, and I don't expect anyone to read it, but to see it from where you're at. But it shows the 12 locations on public land. So they want the proposal that went to the Forest Service was for 12 exploratory holes on public lands, on mining claims that they're not patented. Patented means through the 1872 mining law, you can actually go through a process where you actually own the land. This is the public land, it's unpatented. The pink colors you see in this map, those are patented mining claims up in Emigrant Gulch. They're private land with all the rights that private property owners have in the state of Montana and in the United States. So we looked at this and said, okay, well, 12 holes in the ground up there. But the DEQ needs to be involved, Montana Department of Environmental Quality for permits. So we looked into what they had going on, and we found a similar proposal to the state for 23 exploratory holes on private land, the St. Julian mining claims. I know a lot of you are familiar with that, I've heard of that. They actually had electricity up there at the head of Emigrant Gulch in 1902 before there was electricity in Livingston. I mean, that's some of the history up here. It's the oldest mining district in Montana. It was first, placer gold was first discovered out there in 1863. So it's got a long history. So what we realized, though, is that this proposal, this plan of operations put forth to the Forest Service, had another piece with the state that we're going to run concurrently. So the first phase of their exploration had been segmented out under two different regulatory processes that couldn't really talk to each other. Left hand, right hand, they're following the law and what they're supposed to do, but part of our obligation and our rights are to look at those and say, okay, wait a minute, what's going on here? So we got concerned about cumulative impacts. What's really happening here? So we started to look a little deeper. So we took a flight, thanks to EcoFlight, with local photographer Bill Campbell, who a lot of you know, had a great flight on June 26th. And this was a photo we took on that day. You can see Chico at the bottom of the picture. We're basically over the Yellowstone River. You can see Emigrant Gulch up behind us there. That is Yellowstone Park in the distance with the Ozorka Beartooth Wilderness in between, the Dome Mountain Wildlife Management Unit on the right, 6 mile drainage. West Fork of Mill Creek is just off to the left. I actually, in this meadow, 2 weeks ago, I ran into a grizzly bear right there. I was literally standing in a steaming pile of poppycock. Looked up and there it was coming at me. First time I've ever drawn my bear spray in like 48 years living here in Canada. So anyway, that was a pretty exciting place. So I just tell that story because a lot of us have those kind of stories of Emigrant Gulch. A lot of you are skiers. It's some of the best skiing in the Northern Rockies. I know our Commissioner Caldwell or Dale Sexton have seen grizzly bear tracks on the summit of Emigrant Peak and spring and skiing. There's rock climbing, there's all the hunting that we all enjoy. There's irrigation, so there's 138 CFS water rights coming out of Emigrant Gulch that are irrigating the croplands. And of course, Chico is at the foot of it, and all the people that live in Old Chico. So it's and it's right next to Yellowstone Park, the Beartooth Wilderness, the Yellowstone River. There's a unique geology to the Yellowstone Paradise Valley. Paradise Valley is full of Native American sites that we don't really know what's up there in Emigrant Gulch, but Paradise Valley has quite a few. So there's a lot of values that we all cherish, and it's a lot of reasons why we live here. If you look up this photo in the Gulch, a little further up, shows some of the mineralized areas. This hill right here is the St. Julian property, and this is another mountain here that's got mineralization all through it, so there's a number of things. And then Emigrant Peak is right underneath this. And so there's been, when you're looking for gold, there's lots of ways. There's three basic ways you can go for it. There's one way of mining is placer mining, and that's traditionally what's gone on up there. Gold filters down out of these hills, and they pick it up and it drops out of the creek. This is looking back the other direction. So the St. Julian mine, we're looking at the other side, and the Rossford Ridge is there in front of us in the snow. That's the boundary of the West Fork of Mill Creek. The left skyline is the divide into 6 Mile, and that's Emigrant Peak there. Looking down the Gulch, this is the East Fork of East Fork of Emigrant Creek. You've got gulches, peaks, creeks. So, if you look at the orange rock up there, that's mineralization. That's the natural oxidization. That's a natural process of these minerals as they sort of come out. Some of them are close to the surface, some of them aren't. They just slowly erode out, and we know there's gold there. I mean, they discovered it 150 years ago. So we looked at this, and there hasn't been a lot of activity up there. It has all these other values. The mountain's kind of taking it back in a lot of ways. Anyone who's been up there and seen that road washed out. The skiing up there is world famous. There were people coming from all over the world to ski Emigrant Peak this winter because the stability was so good. It's literally the best skiing in the Northern Rockies. So it's got this sort of 21st century activity economy going on, and things that it's driving, but it's got this 19th century history sort of layered in there. So it's an interesting place, and it's the heart and soul of Paradise Valley. So when we looked at these two proposals, one from the state and one that's in the state's hands and one's at the Forest Service, we thought, well, these are being segmented out, and we want to look at the cumulative, what's really going on up here. This is a lot more exploratory drilling, 30-some holes over 2 years than what's gone on in the past. So the Lucky Minerals website has a long technical report. And we have a page that we were handing out that has a link to it, and some other information. It has a link to the Forest Service plan of operations that was submitted to them, and the scoping notice, which we have hard copies of the scoping notice here for you. And then there's also a link to the state plan of operations that's not available online, but it's been posted to another site. So we found this map inside the technical report. And just to be clear, these companies, these junior companies, and Bob Zimmer with Greater Yellowstone Coalition is sort of our mining expert, if you will, and he's on vacation, so bear with me while I try to channel the inner Bob Zimmer here. Bob, he's lived in Livingston a long time too. So it's not uncommon for these kind of proposals to be out there, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to put together an asset, trying to make it look as good as they can, and then flip it. This company is publicly traded. They have, at the end of the second quarter, they had, or maybe it was the first quarter, I can't remember exactly, but they had $700,000 in liquid assets. They spent about $400,000 on this project to date. They have a plan for $2.5 million for phase one, the cost of exploration, and $5 million for phase two, which they are planning right now. So when we saw this phase two, we're like, wait a minute, they have this phase one, they've separated out into two pieces, and then this phase two that includes roads, and they acknowledge it requires more analysis, and they're planning it right now. And so we're saying, wait a minute, we want to know what all of this, what are the cumulative impacts going to be? And then we saw this map. So the pink places, the pink ones, the pink and the blue are patented mining claims, private property. The pink ones are ones that Lucky Minerals has optioned, which means they have a right to operate one of those lands. And then they're doing some of the drilling. And they also have a water right attached to it, to one of them that they're going to, if you don't mind holding your question, can you remember? Thanks. That they'll use for their drilling operation. And this is all in their plans. It's all public. This is just stuff we figured out looking online and doing some research. What really gave us pause is the green and the gray here. Those are 117 brand new mining claims that are active today that they just staked. And it's a number of 122 that they got others in 6 Mile in the West Fork, the Roster Ridge, and on the west side of Emigrant. We don't know what their plans are, no idea, but these are active mining claims. Most of the claims up there are closed because they've been there for a long time and there's not a lot of activity. This map, what this footprint represents is almost over 2,500 acres. So if you go back to this photo, what is that? This bridge in the foreground is not part of that. The skyline bridge of Emigrant Peak is not part of that. And the far right summit of Emigrant Peak is not part of that. But everything else in this photo is in that 2,500 acre footprint. So that's what really said, wait a minute. These things happen all the time. These junior companies are trying to build these things, but they have a serious plan here. And granted, they want to make it look as good as they can, but that's 2,500 acres of public property that they have a right to explore and use as part of their overall operation. So not only is there mining impacts, but there's going to be there potentially could be significant impacts to our opportunity or access to that area. And so that was the third piece that just kind of gave us some pause. And again, the state agency and the Forest Service, they by law can focus on what's in front of them, the exploratory drilling. But we're looking at, well, what does that mean? Where does that go? It may not go anywhere, but this place is too special for us to take that risk that nothing will happen. So that's why we're here to educate you on what this company vision is. And what they'll do is, back in the 90s when GYC was part of the, went out and visited some of the drilling up there in the 90s, and the joke then was it was 3 guys in a backhoe. And this is 4 guys and $10 million that they want to turn into 100 or something like that. I don't know what exactly they're doing, but they got on paper they want $7.5 million investment into this exploration. And as we all know, the game is to put that into a lot more money. So here's the map. So what does that look like on the ground? So this is a little hard to read. This is an aerial photo of that exact same map that I just showed you. But they've highlighted where the ore bodies are. And so it's not just one spot they're going to go for up there. There's literally these ore bodies spread throughout the valley. 4 of these, I think it's maybe 2 of these they're going to explore in phase 1. It's unknown how many they want to explore in phase 2, but they want to go after all of these. They say so in their document, that they are negotiating with other claims, and they're including the placer claims. They want to control this entire drainage. And so you can see it's spread throughout that area, right up onto the 6 Mile drainage, and leading pretty close to the absorptive area of the wilderness boundary. It's about 3 square miles right there. So what does that look like? What are these orange, or these yellow ore bodies that are kind of superimposed here, these polygons? What do they look like? So again, this is from their report. So this is what they're shopping to investors, and they're saying are there based on they bought previous assays from Pegasus, and they've gone up and they've done surveys on some of the adits, the diggings that are up there, and put all this together. I'm not a geologist, I'm not a mining engineer, but so like I said, I'll try to do my best to translate what I've learned in the last couple of weeks. So this is the DUV mineralized zone. So this is across from the St. Julian mine. It's basically this mountaintop right here, and then all this mineralized area. Excuse me. So the gold in this photo is what they say is the ore body. So the black lines are existing core samples. The dotted lines are what they want to drill. Anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 feet are these holes that they want to drill. We call the Bureau of Mines about this to talk about the Dubuque. The vice president of the company was quoted in the Chronicle this morning saying that there's no open pit mine up there, but I don't know. We don't know. I don't know if he knows, and we don't know either. But what way we interpret this, and some folks in Dubuque helped us look at this, is there's 2 other ways other than the placer mining to mine for gold. And again, there's a lot of you in the room probably definitely know more about this than me, but there's you go after a lode, right? So there's a vein, you can tunnel in underneath in a tunnel, and you can auger up into a vein. This is what they do at the Stillwater mine. We work with the Stillwater mine on a bunch of projects. They're great partners. We're not anti-mining. The Stillwater mine is very different. Not all mines are the same. That's a carbonate-based mineral. This is a sulfide-based mineral, which, when exposed to water and air, creates acid mine. So one way of getting to this is to tunnel in, find a vein, auger up, pull it out, take it off somewhere. The other underground method would be block and cave, where they go in and they take out a cave, main size, the size of this building, if not larger. In one big chunk, they haul all that ore out, take it somewhere, mill it, and process it there. That requires a significant overstory for safety reasons. Obviously, you don't want to caving in, which has happened in places like Colorado, where entire bays have collapsed. So we don't know exactly, and then the third option would be open pit. Just a big open pit mine. We don't know what a mine designer, say we got to the stage of proposing a mine, we don't know what that would look like up here. The people in Butte told us if they were drilling 4,000 feet, that's clearly would be an underground type operation. 1,000 to 2,000 feet could be open pit. They don't know because there's not enough cover. And what they're trying to do here, from what we gather, is they're trying to find those dotted lines. Those are trying to find the extent of these ore lines. They want to get to the bottom of them and find out exactly where they are and what they look like. So if you look at this is the side of the mountain in profile. That's kind of where the ore body is, right up to the top of the mountain. So there's all those hillsides on that side of the drainage look kind of like this. And then this is looking across the other side of Emigrant Peak. This is from their report too, their target zone on the side of Emigrant Peak. And again, we don't know how a mining company would design this, but considering the footprint of the lands that they're working on, that they're trying to gain control of, 2,500 acres is a lot. The Berkeley pit occupies 675 acres. So we're not saying there's going to be a Berkeley pit up there, but that gives you some perspective on what the possibilities are. And like I said, be clear, there's not a mine, there's not a proposal. No one is saying there's going to be an open pit mine up there, but that's exactly what they want. They wouldn't be doing this if they were not trying to develop it to a point where there would be a mine. And if they are just trying to like make us create an asset and sell it and then leave it for the next person to worry about, that's fine, that's their right, but our take is this place is too special for that risk. We want to educate you all, our community, our neighbors on the realities of these kind of things from the get-go, so that we can be informed, so that we don't just go off and get all emotional and say there's going to be a mine in Paradise Valley's ruin, but we can comment and have an educated, informed discussion on this. So, their target here in their summary is a multi-million-ounce gold property. That's what they're looking for, with significant copper and silver and also molybdenum. And as I understand it, this is, you know, the porphyry, the way that the material is up there is just it's sort of spread out throughout these ore bodies, and that's what leaks out. And that's why the placer mine up there has always been like gold dust, right? I think 40,000 ounces of gold they've panned out of there, dredged out of there since 1863. It's not a lot, but it's all up in there. And the way to get it out is to scoop all that ore out, either open pit, cave, block and cave, and then carry off somewhere. So there's significant transport cost. You know, this is a tough place to do business. Anyone who's tried to go hunting up there or riding their bike on the rock ride up there or whatever, you know, it's a tough place to do business, but we can't take that risk that those obstacles aren't going to be overcome, because there's 3 different drainages in play here. There's 6 Mile and the West Fork. Both have potentially easier access to the side of Emigrant Creek. So it's 3 main tributaries of Yellowstone that could be in play with a major mining operation. Again, that's just that's a 10-year, 12, 15-year vision of it, but we need to be aware that's where these things tend to go. So we want to step back a little bit and tell you about what we can do about that now. Did you want to say that?
No, that's great. Next step, I think that's what Joe's presented is so important, that this is what they're trying to sell. This isn't necessarily what we're up against, but this is what they're putting out there as how they would proceed if things work out for them. So that's what we know from their very full exposure on their website of what they're looking to develop or sell. That is not what the Forest Service is dealing with right now.
Or the state.
Or the state. What the agencies are dealing with is a proposal that they must respond to. And it's all under these statutes, this set of laws that we have as a society uphold. 1872 Mining Act and the Montana Dept Reclamation Act. Those are our laws. That the agencies now have to respond to the proposal from this company to put in some exploratory drill holes, to see what the opportunity is for them to go and pursue their vision. But just so we're very clear, what we're responding to, or what our opportunity is right now, is to let the agencies know our interest. And that they are not the bad guys. There are no bad guys, let's put it that way. But what we have is a proposal in front of us that's in our home, that's in this remarkable place that we're all lucky to have as our backyard. But it's not just our backyard, it's a place that's unique on the planet. And we have to keep that in perspective.
And we really want to have local input and local control of these kind of proposals, these kind of developments. And that's important to everyone in this valley, in this county.
So right now is our opportunity, and we're lucky to have both Pat and Andrew here. We can ask questions and direct the more specific Forest Service questions to these guys. But we do have an opportunity until July 15th to submit our comments to the Forest Service and to the Department of Environmental Quality about this proposal, and ask for what is the bigger picture, what is the baseline, what do we need to know. And so under what we're looking at and the regulatory structure of what we're asking the Forest Service to look at is to say, we want a deeper analysis.
So what's happened is that Lucky Minerals has asked for categorical exclusion, which they're allowed to. There are statutes that allow for that under NEPA. But what that means is they do the scoping notice, then that's it. And then they're given a permit. We contend that the segmentation doesn't represent all the reasonably foreseen future actions.
I'm really sorry, I did not mean to do that.
Is that Lucky Minerals? They make it very hard. But in order to, there are things that we can comment on to ask for further analysis, either environmental assessment or environmental impact statement. They're what are called extraordinary circumstances and impacts to those. And there's 7 here. They're all listed. And we have a summary of some of this stuff on the handout. But the ones that are really interested, that really are the endangered species, inventory goal lists. There are inventory goal lists. Those are the pristine lands that have been identified in our backyard or throughout the forest, throughout the country, that are prime habitat for all species, recreation, they provide clean water. Those are really key pieces to our public lands. And they are proposing to drill exploratory holes on inventory goal list lands up there. It's close to the AV wilderness, so there's impacts to the wilderness character. And then again, there's the Native American impacts that we aren't really aware of, but we should be. That's why we want to see more analysis, because of all the different phases that Lucky Minerals has made very clear to the public, but not necessarily in these individual proposals. We think we want a bit of a timeout in proper analysis. It would be real, I'm going to be frank, it'd be really hard to stop exploratory drilling out there. It's a big hurdle, but we can slow it down, we can have a proper analysis, which in the end is better for us. We understand what the impacts are, and it's better for them if they get to the point where the mine is proposed or developed. They know more about it and they can be the best. So it's in everyone's interest for as much analysis as possible, and this fast tracking of this minimal regulatory oversight, in our opinion, is inappropriate.
And that's our job. That's the public's job, is to say that, is to make those comments known.
And that's Lucky's doing. That's the Lucky's Minerals plan for developing this project. But all the other values that are important to us, the ecosystem, water quality, water quantity. In 1963, Climax drilled a hole on Emigrant Peak. Then water came out at 200 pounds per inch. It's still coming out. It's still running water. DEQ went up there on June 30th and said, wait a minute, we're going to have to increase the bond for this because of impacts to water, groundwater. And the bond is shared between the Forest Service and the DEQ, but that just illustrates the point of needing further analysis of all exploration as a whole. So your other values, recreation, is, Chico. Colin, you're invited to say a few words if you like about the value of Chico and what that means in this community, and how many families that employs. And then the trucking issue, like how do they get that in and out of there? With the levels of ore that they say are there, and even a conservative number of ounces, you're looking at 10 million trucks to get that amount of ore out of there, if you do the math. And that would be over many, many years, but it's a lot of trucks. And again, those are big hurdles to overcome from a transportation standpoint, but we can't risk that they won't overcome that. If they don't do it now, they might do it 10, 20 years from now, when something like this would actually be coming to fruition. Who knows what can happen there. So we want, we encourage you to write comments that aren't just like stop a mine, no mine. That doesn't necessarily help. Those comments would go in a file and they may see the light, they'll be looked at, analyzed, but they don't really help the current process that we're in. That's what we're all about, is what are the steps and the things that we can do now in this comment period. Substantive comments relative to the extraordinary circumstances and relative to the project, which in our opinion includes a lot of the values that we all have. They need to be as personal and as unique as you can make them, because form letters tend to just become one letter. And it's also important for the state, because the state has a different regulatory process. So public interest actually means a lot to the state as well. Currently, they have not yet decided on the permit, nor if they're going to include a public comment period before they issue the permit. We don't know. So we would like them to have a public comment period. So I will, I think I've said everything. I'm going to hand it off to Michelle. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. So yeah, what a great resource. Thank you so much, and thank you all again for being here. My name is Michelle with Park County Environmental Council. I have a quick few minutes on what our next steps are, and then we'll go into questions. So, Joe has explained in great detail kind of the process and what happened here, how we got a scoping letter, and when we first took a look at that scoping letter, we got together and we talked, and we're going to write comments. But as we took a hard look at these environmental issues, we realized that this was a really big deal, and it was impacting our community, and we needed to do more. Like Joe said, we're talking about 6 miles of drainage, Emigrant Gulch, the Roster Ridge, and into the west fork of Mill Creek, potentially impacting 2,500 acres of Emigrant Gulch and 3 drainage routes. And so we knew immediately that this was a really important issue, and we needed to get to work. We needed to work together as a community. So I'm going to talk about what we can do now. And the first thing I want to do is thank everyone that has already taken steps to work on this project. I've been so impressed with the people in our community that really cherish the Paradise Valley, cherish the Chico Hot Springs, and understand that this is a remarkable place worth fighting for. So Joe and Mike DeVries, they're not here. Right after we saw the scoping letter, they drove up Emigrant Gulch, they took photos. Many of you might have read their letter to the editor. Joe's been at the farmer's market, spreading the word. It's just so important that we have people like that in our community. Jesse Logan put together a GIS map, and Murray immediately invited Joe and I up to his house to look at Emigrant Creek. So that's just the beginning of what people in this community are doing and will do as we move forward. So then, this community, we're not willing to stand idly by while a Canadian company stakes a claim on our home. This is not an unpopulated Canadian frontier. This is the Paradise Valley, the gateway to Yellowstone National Park, home to cutthroat trout and grizzly bears. This is a World Heritage Site, and this is our backyard. This project affects our entire community. We're very lucky we live in this beautiful place, but this is a place with national and international importance as well, and the whole world cares about Yellowstone National Park and Chico Hot Springs. So the state, it's pretty awesome. The stakes are just too high. We have the opportunity now to get educated, to learn more about what's happening in our backyard, and to work together. Because this is just an incredibly important place, and it's our heritage and a legacy that we want to leave for future generations. So PCEC, we're very lucky to have the guidance and support of the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, Yellowstone Bend Citizens Council, but like I said, it takes our whole community, it takes a village. So if you haven't already signed in, we're passing around some sign-in sheets. Please do that. Put as much information on there as you feel comfortable doing. This is just the beginning. We'll reach out in the future as we move forward with a coordinated strategy on what our next moves are. Just put your email on there. We send emails. That's really important. Next, if you have not yet renewed your membership, or if you're not yet a member with the Park County Environmental Council, it's the time. We've got some forms in the back. The Park County Environmental Council has been a part of this community for 25 years because year after year after year, people in this community send us $25 checks, $50 checks, $100, you know, that's why we're here and why we will continue to be here. So we need your support. We're the first line of defense and a voice for the environment in this community. And then the last request I have, and Joe and Caroline have already mentioned, is to put together comments to the Forest Service. And not just your own personal comments, tell 10 of your friends to do the same. Make sure that we have 100 people here. We have 100 people in Emigrant Gulch, or sorry, in Emigrant Hall at that meeting. And if everybody is telling 10 of their friends, we're gonna get a lot of comments, and that really shows the Forest Service, the Department of Environmental Quality, our elected officials, that this is a community that values and cherishes this place. There's huge public interest, and we want them to see that. So spread the word. Like Joe said, we don't have any forum comments because we know that you know why this is a special place. And that's the idea of scoping. We need to hear from the community. What are the issues that maybe the Forest Service hasn't had an opportunity to think about? You know? So these need to be your comments from your heart. We have lots of resources for you on our websites. Like, apologize if you've gone to the Park County Environmental Council. We had some problems with our website the last couple of days, but it's up and running, and that's envirocouncil.org. There's information there, links to Forest Service scoping documents, to the Lucky Minerals site, to DEQ. So check that out. I might have a chance to pull it up for you. Oh, there. And then the Yellowstone Bend Citizens Council, they've got a great website with information. We'll be at the farmers market every Wednesday. But the comment deadline is July 15th, and that's next week. So, you know, this is the sort of thing that you should just go home and do it. And once you've got yours in the mail, make sure that your next step is to tell your friends to do it. So with that, I also want to thank the Elks. We're so lucky to have this great space, and thank you all for being here. I think we'll open it up to questions.
This handout has the addresses and the website. Submit comments for the Forest Service and the DEQ. And it has the links to those operating plans, proposals, and some other pointers on your comment. So this gentleman had one earlier. I'll get back to you, but he didn't have one earlier on, so I promise him I can.
Thanks, Joe. My name's Stan Abel. I live on Bridger Hollow Road, right at the base of the street. And I'm really glad I came here tonight because I have to tell you, I've been listening to this presentation, literally taking my breath away. I had no idea this was on tape.
Well,
I'm going to get to a question.
Yeah.
And I can't express how profoundly a bad idea that I think this is. My original question when I raised my hand, sorry. Excuse me. Was who owns the private land? How do we have an option on it? They own private land. Do we know who owns the private land on those lands? How does?
So, thanks for your question. So, the question was, well, first the comment was this thinks this is a really bad idea, and the question was who owns the private land? Who owns those lands? How do they get options on it? So, first off, it's exploratory drilling. So the idea is, you know, we think it's a bad idea too, but we're very early stages. Just want to make sure that's clear to everybody. But the private lands are, you can go on Montana Dept. It's a public website where all of our records on who owns private land in the state of Montana can be found. You go there, they list certain owners there. A lot of the cases, like in the Julian properties, those have been patented. So under 1870, if we step back, under 1872 mining law, they can claim them, stake them, work them a certain amount every year, and then there's a process where they pay $5 an acre and they own it. And it's still $5 an acre. It's like $2.50 to $5. There is a moratorium on the patenting process since 1994 with the BLM. all this stuff is run through the BLM, even though it's Forest Service property. So no one's patenting mining claims up there anymore, but the ones that are there were mostly patented around the turn of the century, up into the 30s. There might have been a few a little later. There are several websites where you can find this information out on when things were staked, who owns them, and most of the cases, some of these properties are owned by multiple family members as they sort of have expanded over the generations. So there's trusts involved. And so to answer your question about how Lucky Minerals gets a right to it, it's a classic play. They have a land guy, goes out and talks to them and promises them. In their report, they actually tell us exactly what they've done. They've optioned the Julian properties. They paid $15,000 on June 1st. I might get this wrong. They've got a whole series of promised payments. And then there's another group down at the bottom of unpatented claims that they have optioned on as well. So they have the right to go in and under 1872 mining law and other state laws, they can go in and work those claims. So it's the mining laws are set up to facilitate these processes, but like I said, they're 19th century rules, 26th century. There's a lot of questions. There's some people over here. I'll get over to the next. Right here in front.
So in one of the summary slides that you had up there, you had a picture of the mountain, it was kind of an aerial view, and then the gray, and I think it was pink or something, yeah, that one. So, and then the one after that. So you're kind of showing that they know where these pockets are. So why are they going in and doing test sites?
So your question is, they seem to know where these are, why do they have to drill it? Well, that's a great question. Again, I'm not a mining engineer, so I can't speak to it fully, but typically miners don't trust other miners. So they'll look at previous cores, but typically they want to go in and get their own. And then they also want to do more drilling so that they can define some of, this company in particular has bought previous cores and analyzed them and analyzed the diggings out of attics. Here, so they want to go in and they want to take that information, extrapolate it, put their brains to it, drill a little more, try to find the bottom of these ore pockets so they can find out just the size of them. So there's a lot of different things in play there. So, technologies change. There's a lot of reasons why mining companies come back here 20, 30 years.
So this is kind of a two-part question. So the second part of the question is, okay, so once they get the test for permits, does that give them a little more leverage to move forward a little bit more? Is it?
They still have to go through a process to get their phase 2.
Okay.
But what it does, if they find things, it starts to increase their value for their asset. And frankly, it gets harder to start stopping the process. There's, I don't know how to start. Let's just go back and forth a little bit here. I'll get to y'all on our goals. Right now.
The other thing also, the technical report, which where Joe pulled a lot of these views from the company's website, it's on their website. It's a rather daunting 88 pages, but it's a good resource if you want to dig deeper, learn more.
This woman right here, and then I'll count around tonight.
I have a couple technical questions. It used to be that scoping, if something wasn't mentioned during the scoping period, then 10 years down the road, if it became an issue, they didn't have to consider it because it wasn't considered in the initial scoping period. Is that still true?
I would look to Pat to help answer that question.
Well,
Remember
Jenny.
that scoping is just for the exploratory
That's my
drilling
second part of the
proposal.
question. Yeah.
That's all we're asked to provide comments on, is that very narrow proposal for the 12 drill holes on public land.
So what made me think about that was what Tracy just asked well, if they know it's there, why do they have to drill to find out it's there? And that's the kind of question that, in my experience, people think, oh yeah, well, we don't need to ask that, that's kind of esoteric. But But that's the kind of thing for everybody in the room to kind of think outside the box and put in their comments, even if you think it's a stretch.
Jenny had to say something, and Pat wanted to clarify something.
Yeah, if I might. Thank you, everyone, for inviting us to this meeting tonight. I'm Pat Harris, of course, geologist for the Custer Gallatin National Forest. Our job is very unique. We straddle a line. We walk the fence. We're not here to defend the mining company. We're not here to ally with anybody. We're here to do our jobs. But there's some things that you need to understand. Your question was great. Why do they need to drill? Why do they need to drill more? Okay, this is the ore body. That they portray in their report. What do you notice about that ore body? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intercepts. You also have a uniform color. Let's just suggest that's portrayed, that uniform color. Is that the way it works? Exist in the face of the earth? No. So why do they want to drill? Because there is variances in ore quality, i.e. grade, continuity. My question would be, where is this? Who invented that? Who invented this? Now, what they're talking about in the report, if you read it, is it's a breccia. Maybe this does go down to the south of the earth. But you don't know that unless you drill it. You don't know the grade. You don't know the volume, how many cubic yards. And you don't know the continuity. All those things have a huge influence on the economics of an ore body. So that's why you drill an ore body.
I just want to quickly introduce Jenny Harbine, who's
Thanks,
an
Pat.
attorney with Earth Justice, so she can help answer those other questions. Yeah, thank you, Pat, so much. That's great.
Just a point on the scoping process underneath that. I mean, what we're looking at here, of course, is the best case scenario for Lucky Minerals, which is the worst case scenario for us. And the scoping notice describes a very narrow exploration project. We know that there are multiple phases to that exploration project that Lucky Minerals already has fully formulated in their own minds. They just haven't told the Forest Service all about it. And although the Forest Service scoping notice is very narrow, it's perfectly appropriate to ask the Forest Service to expand that scope. That's certainly within the scope of the law at this stage. So as you're writing your comments, I wouldn't feel constrained by those 12 drill sites. We know already there are 23 drill sites on private land and another phase of exploration before they even get to mining. And it's perfectly appropriate to ask the Forest Service to consider all of that exploration at this early stage in an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement, and not consider it categorically excluded from the law.
Go over to this side.
I have a comment, and it's a serious one, and no one's brought it up, and I tried to bring it up on Facebook. This is about NAFTA. If this is a serious company, and I have to say I have a little habit of going to Lucky Hills, and it sounds like one of the games I play. You see, I mean, a lot of these are flaky companies who just want to raise penny stocks at the Toronto Stock Exchange, which is full of this crap. If it is in fact a serious company, under NAFTA law, you girls better go read that agreement right now, they supersede all our environmental laws, they supersede our community needs, they supersede everything. And American mining companies have gone into Canada, and the communities have risen in an uproar like this, and they have gone to court with NAFTA, and the American companies have won. I posted one on This Is Really Livingston this afternoon about an American company going into New Brunswick, the way of funding, wanting to blast historical sites, archaeology, I mean, just amazing stuff. And the Canadians lost because of NAFTA. So all of you who hate politics and don't pay attention, this is what the result is. You end up in a situation where under an international trade agreement, and we all should be talking to John Tester about this, who could talk to Obama, the Canadian company, which sounds a little flaky to me. I grew up in Canadian mining towns, I should tell you. I was born in a Canadian gold mining town and grew up in the Canadian north of the mining engineer father who specialized in blasting the first opening for Montana. So I know a little bit about it. They're corrupt, they pay no attention to environmental laws, and they don't have to under NAFTA. Pay attention to Montana environmental laws. And you really have to know that and read the agreement and look at all the examples of where NAFTA has superseded the rulings of the state of Montana.
We really appreciate that, and I think that's exactly part of what we're doing here is to get through these stages as they come up. We're not quite at this stage with NAFTA yet, but these are 10, 12, 15-year processes.
I'm suggesting we get a lot of money.
Yeah,
Get
so
a lawyer on.
these end up becoming political processes. Come back over to Joe.
I'd like to add, I don't know, I had I guess the misfortunate opportunity to work in a placer mine in Alaska when I was a young man. My name is Andy, by the way. And there was a drilling crew. And every day they would take off and they would head up the roads were bulldozed in purposely for the drilling crew. And they were a wild bunch. And but they had to continually make drilling pads for their I think they had 2 or 3 drilling rigs going. And up this, there was a placer mine that followed a valley. So they had to go back and forth across the valley, build a platform site for the drilling rig and start punching holes. It's my understanding that they have to use water in drilling to be able to get the core samples to come forth. So it's not a simple process that says, oh, it's no big deal, we're just going to punch into a hole. No, each pad is an excavation in itself to get the drilling rig in place. And as a young man began working in that situation, the more time I spent there, the more depressing it became. And similar like the fishing industry, that rapes our seas. So this is just to paint a picture. There's going to be, if they have a main road and they're going to have a trunk road, and then off the trunk road they will plan, and then they'll have numerous drilling pads that they'll have to excavate into place. And each drilling pad, if the business to happen, they'll have regulations. They'll have to have holding ponds or whatever for the effluent. The water goes down and mixes, the air mixes with the ores and all that, and then we have the stuff that comes back out. That's the process that I saw. So as soon as I heard about this, I said, wow. That's the ugly picture.
And remember that in this proposal, for these 12 holes, they're on existing roads. So that there's no road building in this proposal.
There are 3 that are going to be a helicopter.
Yeah.
Howie, so there's a lot of people. We'll do our best.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Howie Wolf, and as you know, Joe, I outfit the guide backpacking and some canoe trips throughout the region. Been doing that for 37 years, and I've been involved in a number of this type of controversy, including an effort that resulted in stopping an open pit mine in the Absaroka Mountains near Meeteetse, Wyoming in 1976. And I want to thank you folks for putting all this together in a clear, concise way that we can all understand. I agree with you that we need to let the Forest Service know that the whole big picture needs to be looked at. We need to be looking at cumulative impacts. We need to be looking at ways to minimize the destruction of water resources and everything else. But I want to add to that it's been my experience over the years that there is nothing more powerful than an aroused and emotional populace that's united in an effort to defend their backyard. And just because the Forest Service says they only want comments within these parameters, we are taxpaying American citizens. We have a right to be heard and to say whatever we want to tell the Forest Service. And I think that in addition to all this good technical stuff that we've been talking about, that we need to send a message at the very outset that this is the wrong place to explore for a mine, this is the wrong place to expand exploration for a mine, and this is the wrong place to plan a mine. And we need to send that loud and clear as part of our comments and as part of everything we do, a part of everything we do from the very outset in this whole process.
Any glasses?
My name is Kathy Goodrich. Two quick things. First of all, I wanted to clarify with you those 7 criteria that are the key, sound to me like the crux of everything, right? That's what everything hinges up, yeah, that one. That's what's needed. Now, is that for the DEQ only, or is that for the Forest Service?
This is for the categorical exclusion that Lucky's asking for a categorical exclusion.
Right.
As is their right under law. These 7 extraordinary circumstances are listed in the statute as, if we can show reasonable expectation of an impact on these, then further analysis is required.
Okay, so that's what we need to focus our comments, right?
I think those are important areas to focus on. The other thing is the categorical exclusion is appropriate only for exploration that takes place in under a year, which probably explains why Lucky Minerals has segmented this exploration into more than one phase. There could be an explanation for that. So if we expand the scope of review to encompass the entire exploration plan as shown on Lucky's website, that takes it out of the categorical exclusion. And the Forest Service also has discretion to determine that there are significant impacts that need to be studied in an environmental assessment.
Can you also describe, the EIS and the EE are very different things. One is much more thorough and would actually address the needs. And so that's the environmental impact statement, correct?
Yeah,
The
the
environmental
purpose-
assessment can be a lot of, some of them I've seen have a lot of opinion and very little fact.
The purpose of an environmental assessment is to determine the significance of impacts. So as the law is written, an agency can decide to prepare an environmental assessment to decide whether an environmental impact statement is necessary, or they can go straight to the EIS.
So it sounds like we should ask for the EIS as a part of what we're asking for because of the scope of what we're dealing with,
You
right?
might as well.
Thank you.
Can I make a mention of one thing? By regulation, the Forest Service and federal agencies cannot consider a proposal expanding the scope unless there's a formal proposal in front of us. So even though there is the mine discussion, we talk about trucks and all these things that could happen, we talk about their technical report, which I have right here. You're right, it is 88 pages of interesting reading. There's no proposal there. The only proposal by law, by regulation, that we can consider is the one in front of us. You talked about that, Carolyn, earlier. The narrow scope of the drilling exploration proposal. So suggesting that there might be a mine or that we should be more expansive, our regulations basically tell us we have to add a reasonable, foreseeable proposal that's in front of us, that's there, articulated, in order for us to consider it within the context of the cumulative effects. Certainly, the state's drilling proposal meets that criteria, no question about that.
But the Forest Service would not.
No, the Forest Service would consider the state because there is a formal proposal in front of the state. Thus, we would consider those cumulative effects. But anything relevant to futuristic mine or 4 or 5 drainages or massive trucks and those kind of things, there is no formal proposal in front of us. Thus, it would be speculation on the part of the agency to start to predicate effects analysis based on that which we do not have in our hands.
That is accurate.
Well, to be clear, however, the Forest Service is obligated to consider cumulative impacts even in the scoping stage to the extent those impacts are reasonably foreseeable. We may disagree on the regulations on that point, but that's our reading.
Gentleman in the back has had it the whole time.
Thank you. I'm Joseph Scalia. I'm a practicing psychoanalyst in Livingston and Bozeman. Have been for many, many years, decades, and I'm a cultural critic, and I'm the past president of Montana Wilderness Association, 2006 and 2008. I want to if you will, identify myself sort of with what Margot has said and with what Howie has said, and to suggest that there is a place, in addition to what you all are doing, for us as a collective to speak outside of these boxes that are critiquing within the system, as must be done, but to step outside and critique outside the system and say this system is horribly flawed, which all of us feel in our bones and are outraged and frightened by. And to make the point publicly as a collective, numerous of us, that there's a big difference between what is legal and what is ethical. And I will close by saying, if you would go to the serious labor, and not that I suggest everyone should, because it is a serious labor, to read in depth Pope Francis's recent encyclical on the environment, you would see support for this kind of notion. Thank you.
I'm Lil Erickson. I've been here for 37 years, and I'm a mining specialist in Idaho for many years. Raised by a mining family, my father's a miner, and I was a mining specialist. One thing I learned in the years of working on mining issues is that while the Forest Service and the Department of Environmental Quality are right now the focal point, they really are not going to be the power brokers on this. Don't ignore the county commissioners, Steve, sorry about that, because they will come to us, Sway Senator's Tester's office, our elected representatives, because the companies will go and make an economic argument, and they will say they're bringing jobs in a tax base, and generally local government will support the idea. And so it's very important to be working on our elected officials at a local level now and at a national level. Also, to raise economic issues in the scoping document. If you go ahead, I'm sorry, I disagree with you. I mean, I understand what you're saying from the Forest Service, but I think it's important that people put their concerns into the letter and talk about the economics of it, the jobs that are at stake, the economy that's based on recreation and tourism, because those arguments will come up. And if they get the exploration permit, the mining company will use that as an argument to move forward because of their investment in exploration. They ought to be then given the next option, next phase of exploration, then they ought to be able to go into a full mining scale, and also advocate strongly that they use helicopters for all the exploration. Because if they get approval in an exploration phase to build a road, then they're going to establish a history of egress through roads. And so if we insist on helicopters, then that becomes the history of egress.
Andy, you got
I just want to reiterate how important it is, I think, to demand in our letters that they do the EIS instead of the.
Yes.
this gentleman right here.
Eric Hastings from Bozeman. I am a property owner in Paradise, and I also am the chairman of a foundation called Warriors in Quiet Waters. You spoke about economic impact. I'm going to write my letter about the economic impact that the Paradise Valley and the Yellowstone ecosystem brings to tens of thousands of very injured people, and how absolutely special it is, and how this is the Mecca, and it's why we're located here, and why we bring injured servicemen from around the United States to be healed in a rehabilitative way by the waters that flow pure in the Paradise Valley. So I give a shit about what takes place in the Paradise or in those mountains. And I can show photo after photo of a guy with no arms and no legs with stumps crossed in the front of a drift boat in the Paradise Valley, looking up at eagles and enjoying that and catching the fish. Now that may seem to be an absurd argument, but it's not to me. There's an economic impact on rehabilitation. And it's not tens of thousands, it's hundreds of millions of productive dollars and jobs that these folks will fill if those injuries are not addressed. And we address 100 per year right now. If those injuries are not addressed, it will go unanswered. So those are some jobs for the county commissioners, wherever you are in this room, for you to think about when you think about economic impact. Further, many of the people that we serve move to this area specifically not to become hard rock miners, guides and to go to Montana State University and get jobs or get educated to get the kinds of jobs that will sustain them over here. Well, now, the other part of this comment, we need to have an objective. If you don't know where you're trying to go, all roads are fair. All winds are fair. And right now, what I don't see coming from the discussion is an objective. What is the objective of what we're trying to do tonight? Is the objective to stop the effort? If it is, then I think that's a laudable objective, and I don't think you're going to find too many people in here who are against it. And I believe that we can collectively come up with the economic impact to support that, because it is economics. And there is a value to what they are doing. And maybe there's a way to circumnavigate NAFTA and own that property up there and protect that property so that it is never, again, at a price that's affordable, because those 1872 laws were extractive, and that's why they wrote them, and it brought economic impact here, and they're still around and still in effect. And so we need to recognize we're not just going to write a few letters. You may have to open your wallet and put a few millions in the coffer to buy the property to say, well, now I own that, and no, you can't drill it.
To be clear, our goal is to stop this, ultimately. But we have a short-term goal, which is to compensate. So we're right on.
Well, and these are multi-year battles, and we know we can win them. And we may lose at first. We may not stop the exploration. We gotta try. We may not stop it, but we gotta try. And there are future phases. And we gotta put pressure on every single one of them. And we've done it before. GYC, Earth Justice, Beartooth Alliance, stop the Noranda mines. And they did that through years of activism, through legal battles, which created the space and bought the time for a political solution. And it was exactly as we said. The government essentially bought out that mine.
And this is the first crack in the door. We want that door closed, and we want it closed now. But the way we do that is to have meetings like this, and to empower the agencies who have this in front of them, to let them know this community feels such incredible passion about this. That is hugely significant. This place is invaluable. It's worth a hell of a lot more gold. But we also have this process that we need to be part of. And we need to be part of it in an effective, respectful way to be able to then move forward. So it's a multi-pronged strategy. This is not going to be quick and easy. It may be, hallelujah if it is. And then we're going to have a big party here. But it may not be. But to participate in this in the correct, in one way. That's not to say it's the only way. But right now, what we have in front of us and brought us all here is this scoping proposal. And so that's what we've got to play an official and not to say that's the only strategy that is or will be in front of us as things move on. But this is that crowd in the door, and we got to respond.
We're gonna be working, we're planning, this is for the long haul. We're gonna be, looking at what is on the table, what are our options, and it's not just the Park County Environmental Council, the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, it's Yellowstone Bend Citizens Council, and it's all of our community, and Cole and Davis, and all of the folks that live in the valley. We need to come together, and after we get through this crux, which is to get our comments in by the 15th, hopefully slow it down, and then we'll talk about, okay, what's our strategy? Can we buy? I don't know, but what will be those next steps?
I have to say, I'm sorry, we already own this land.
Yeah.
Land. We should not have to buy it to go down that track. We did that with Miranda, and this could very well be deployed on minerals as well. Let's propose a mine on the edge of Yellowstone, because then they'll buy it. We own this land. This is public land.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, and that's why we need to have everybody at the table talking so that whatever the strategy is coordinated, thoughtful, and so.
That's why meetings like this are important to educate people about the realities of some of those laws. So,
Just a second, that's not quite true. The surface is owned as forest. The mineral rights, we do not own, the U.S. government doesn't. I mean, that's where the difference is. The surface and the mineral rights, and we've got to go back to those mineral rights, and we can't confuse the two.
there's a lot of debate that we get into on that, but that's down the road. I want to get to some other people's questions. Patricia had her hand.
I think we all know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I know you've spoken really highly of Stillwater Mines, but in fact, they have followed the vein and have done a great deal, their geologists have done a great deal of research on the veins headed our way, and in fact, the wine glass is rich in minerals. And in fact, they are buying property in the wine glass.
We're not here to talk about.
So, but I'm just saying, it's the tip of the iceberg. We need to know which companies are planning what, as well as this company. This is just one of the companies that is taking a look at this.
Thank you. Slow down front.
What is the history of the previous core drilling? Why didn't it proceed?
Oh, that, I can't really answer that. That's a complicated question. There's a lot of history there. Companies come and go. They're underfunded. They maybe don't know what they're doing. They price of gold. There's many factors possible.
We should probably wind this up. We're losing folks, and we'd love to have the opportunity to answer questions.
Yeah, what we got here is come on.
Answer. Remember that so much of what we talked about came from the technical report that's on Lucky Minerals' website. That's in large part what we're responding to, where we get our information. I really encourage you to take a look at it. It's full of information.
Colin?
Andy wants
Oh, wait,
Andy,
Yeah. Can I just say it's not boiling too many people here. I want to make sure we emphasize that right now all the Forest Service is scoping, and all that we are going to look at when we do this is the core drilling. We're going to do an environmental, economic, and social analysis on the core drilling. All the comments and all of the looking forward on what the core drilling means is outside of the scope of what the Forest Service is looking at right now. I appreciate the passion that is in this room, and I can guarantee you that when we read your letters, we will understand that passion, but the scope of our project that we are looking at is just the core drilling. And that is what our environmental assessment, whether we go with the CE, the E, or the EIS, is going to look at. It is the scope of the core drilling. And looking beyond anything beyond that scope is not what we are looking at as of right now.
Do you have a responsibility, though, as a public citizen, excuse me, I know, but
he's got a responsibility representing the Forest Service to listen to whatever citizens have to say, even if it's outside the boundaries of that scoping process. You have to take that into account. You are a public servant, sir.
And
we will read those,
But
but we may not have to be able to respond to those, all he's suggesting. We may not be able to provide the relief he's requesting.
Telling us how to help.
I'm not saying that people should ignore the scoping process, but there's a bigger picture involved here, and citizens have a right to express their feelings.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's scope.
We've got one question here, but let's finish with having Colin speak after you ask your question. But don't go away. If you have questions, please stay and ask them. But go ahead.
My question is, we are going to need to get our congressional representatives on board with this. How do we, have they been contacted? Have our congressmen, I know that we'll mention that, but how do we get them on our side? We have some rather slippery characters in office. All the way around.
Might be a conversation left in the bar.
But really, what do we do to get our senators and our congressmen aware and involved now?
Jennifer's right here, you can talk to her, she represents Senator Chester.
I think the level of public interest is a good start. And then let's pursue that. I don't know.
Thanks for your patience, getting to you.
Well, you know, my wife and I didn't buy cheap hot springs because we've got a lot of extra money laying around. We bought it because we were afraid somebody else would and taking it in a direction that it shouldn't go. And we don't believe that we do own it. And I don't really feel that the arts that I feel like Chico belongs to this valley and this state. It's become iconic outside the state. Yellowstone Park iconic in the world. I employ 190 families right now. They're not just families, they're friends. And they depend on Chico Hot Springs, as do a lot of businesses in this town. Like I said, it belongs to all of us. I'm lucky enough to be a quarterback on a really, really cool team, and it's a lot of fun. But when you talk about extraordinary circumstances, the fragility of this ecosystem is an extraordinary circumstance. When there is an earthquake in Idaho, there is silt in our swimming pool. That tells you how fragile this ecosystem is. So, and I totally respect and love the Forest Service, and I know they're between a rock and a hard place. But there's no question what the end game is here. If you talk about economics, this company didn't form itself and isn't soliciting this kind of money without an end game. And there's only one possible really end game, and that is an open pit mine, because that's the only way to economically harvest these materials that we're all pretty certain lie there. So this is a really scary thing, and I do believe at the end of the day we can beat this. But for us right now, we really need to slow this down and beat this now. If they're trying to amass an asset, then we need to create a liability. We need to make what they're trying to do a lot less valuable and make them realize that we're not going to take this lying down, that we are going to slow it down. I can tell you, I have one hot water source and one cold water source, and if those are interrupted, I don't think I'm going to survive as a church camp. I don't think it's going to work that way. And that's a possibility. The other thing that wasn't brought up is just to the south of us, in the adjoining land, there's a massive aquifer, an underground aquifer that feeds Yellowstone Park. And every time they start drilling and they need water or they mess with water, it is so connected. The ground, you know, this is Yellowstone's backyard. I mean, it's just insane to think that this could even take place legally. And I know we are outraged emotionally, and we should be, because it's just such an affront that these gentlemen in Vancouver are very quietly setting up a pretty intelligent game here, and they're organized and they have traction. And I'm definitely afraid. You talk about the door being open just a crack. It's a crack that we can't afford. I mean, this community can't afford it. 190 families can't afford it. It's really scary. I mean,
God's country can't afford it. God's country can't afford it.
I totally agree with that. And I feel like, you know, this is definitely an emotional comment, but this is about gold. This is a really highly coveted entity that really has no practical use. This is
happen.
I mean, honestly, that's the case, and it's, you know, I think whether you're the most radical environmentalist or the most conservative, this is a bad idea. I mean, this is just really a bad idea, and there's absolutely no upside to it at all. It's just, I think all of us, just being outside the last 2 weeks, we sort of need to start repairing the earth and not continuing what's been happening, and certainly not over gold. And again, I know there's a lot of rules and regulations. This is a very dangerous thing, and it is grizzly habitat, and there is pollution possibilities, and it is a pristine area. If you've ever gone up, you can go and go and go, and it's quiet. There's no helicopters landing. There's no dynamite going off. There's no drilling going. You know, it's a fantastic place to be. So many of my guests, they walk out the front door of the lobby with their children running across, and they're running right where even the trucks that are going to supply that mining equipment are going to go. And there's people that get married on that front lawn. There's locals. So many locals come up to swim, and they bring their own picnic basket, and they sit on those chairs because it's quiet, and they read a book there. They're not there to listen to teams of men going by. I mean, even within the scope of this first part, it's going to be very detrimental to our business. They're not going to drive around the back way. They're going to come right through there. And it's going to, and whether they want to come early in the morning, late at night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday during your wedding, that's their choice. You know, so that alone, and it's not going to be safe. It's not going to be safe for the people that bring their dogs. And you know what they do? They go out that front door and they hike up Emigrant Gulch. They leave Chico. They walk all the way up there with their children and with their dogs. And they go up there to hike and to be alone. And that's what we're talking about. Those are extraordinary circumstances in my mind.
We have a lot of information about this to be able to share. So I have other questions.
Oh, you're good.